Thank you very much again. So before to start, just a little biographical note. On the side of the slide there is a symbolic proposition to the workshop that Monica is not here, that she prepared for us on stitching as a feminist strategy of care. And here there is a reproduction of Palestinian tattoos, the Palestinian embroidery, which very much is a symbol of women's embodied knowledge and their connection with nature and history. And this is a picture I took from a shirt that I was given in 2004 when I was living in Gaza. And if you notice, it has a stitch torn in it, which represents symbolically the wound we have been discussing these days. So I put it here because it is symbolic and because I never stopped talking about Palestine and and bring it in whatever it is. So my talk today focuses on the process of definition of my methodology, my doctoral research methodology, which investigates gender policies in food systems, promoted especially by European actors in Morocco and Tunisia. And I intend to have not historical, but more an outlook that goes from the 90s to the present time. And the research is multidisciplinary, and so I bring here today some ethnographic aspects that are referred to my positionality, which I'm exploring through the lenses of decolonial feminism. And I bring here also some very initial results with respect to the repositioning of language and the non-performing, thank you, Lade, again, translation of concepts that have been defined as colonial in the context of transnational gender governance. I try to.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You can do it here.
Okay, I'll just, no, okay, so, okay. Okay, so the theoretical framework of my research is based, of course, on post-colonial, about the colonial studies, and I draw on the theories of the coloniality of power and the modern colonial gender system to frame power dynamics between the researcher and their subject of study, which in my view must be part of the researcher's positionality. I refer to feminist critical reflexivity and feminist imbricated approaches to develop about the plurality of situated standpoints and the role of the researcher as an impetus for social change. And in this sense, I'm looking at how the positionality of the researcher leads to learning and to learning experiences, how it can trigger learning experiences, and how these experiences can possibly contribute to social change, also through the repositioning of language. So I focus on language, also because as a first background, I am a linguist. And I focus on language as site of both meaning making and power making. So in this sense, I shift from term into language, the attention towards the epistemic sabotage, to say to Steve and others. So in this respect, I'm working to explore or unpacking some controversial concepts such as empowerment and agency. So here is part of the genealogy of the colonial and feminist decolonial theories that I used to develop my research, because I got a bit lost at the beginning. I said, okay, there is all this framework and the rich theories and so on, but when it comes to apply it on the ground and do an ethnographic research, what do I do exactly? Rather than, having this as background, but which methods do I use? Okay, mixed methods, etc. But, still I am studying other people speaking in other languages, living in other places, having other standpoints, other views. So how do I do? How do I manage this? And I looked into literature. I didn't really find too much, to be honest. So I decided to embark in this thing. So one of the first reference, of course, I use is Pagano, who is is considered as the initiator of the decolonial thought, the Peruvian sociologist, and he shifted the attention from economics to politics while elaborating the theory of the coloniality of power. But this implies the control over sex, resources, and products. But he did not develop, or rather overlooked, gender as race and gender, both of them, and also, in terms of labor force and how the organization of labor is also informed by gender. And since the organization of labor is an axis of the coloniality of power, we can consider his paradigm incomplete in this respect. Before all this, of course, Edward Said, for me as a scholar of Arab and Islamic cultures, was central to my formation. And in Orientalism, a masterpiece, he describes exactly how various disciplines, institutions, processes of investigation, etc., have shaped the way, the manner in which the Europeans shape the other. In this case, the Americans, while knowing them. So it's very much a relation of, it very much highlights the link between knowledge and power in this process of knowing the other, shaping who is the other. And this is, I think, very relevant to my work, because this is what can happen while researching on other, and those others who have been colonized and for some respects are still. Another is Ramon Sorel, and this paradigm on, he worked on coloniality of power, of being, and of knowledge as interrelated. This paradigm is a bit more optimistic, let's say, because he was looking at the coloniality as a critique to advocate for a pluralist, transmodern, decolonized world where possibly everybody, every peoples were able to communicate on an equal stand. Then in the recent times, the Irish educator Jacqueline Welsh and then Walter Mignolo, that you, Liliana, mentioned, the Argentine semiologist, in 2018, they elaborated further on the concept of decoloniality, and it's interesting because there is a kind of, they don't progress well. They progress in a negative term with respect to gross wealth because they relate everything back to this very violent relationship over body and knowledge. So for them, it's always a violent relationship that resides in the first place in the racism and colonialism. But then what made it the twist for me is the work of Maria Gones, the Argentinian philosopher and feminist activist, who back in 2010 elaborated on the coloniality of gender, and she puts together the three frameworks. So the coloniality of power of Pagano, the work on intersectionality of the third world, so-called feminists, and her same work on feminist, on the colonial feminism. And she came up with this framework of modern colonial gender system, which very, very much, in my view, applies to transnational gender politics as they have developed in the past 25 years. Then, in more very recent time, I studied on the work of Françoise Leger, French, but from La Réunion, on the colonial feminism. And she talks about it as like, when is about when, you know, making visible the colonial genealogies of entanglements of oppression. So for her, decolonial feminism stands alongside queer, revolutionary, Black, indigenous feminisms, but for her comes before, because if we don't solve that thing, we are not really able to go forward. And finally, coming to the places I study, Soumaya Misteri, a Tunisian sociologist, also young, wrote recently on decolonizing feminism, and for her it means also accepting that there is a problem with certain issues that are typical of the struggle of feminists, but especially of white and Western feminists, and of issues that originate in the Westernness or the whiteness. And one of these issues, she says, is empowerment. And I agree, and I will I'll talk about this later. So in this sense, she echoes Lila Bulugud, who warns us of being suspicious of anyone who looks at the suffering of others. We talked about this a little bit in these days, of other kinds of women, as if they were not connected to us, to our choices, to our governments, to our institutions. So this is the continuum that she recommends us. And she also warned of using, you know, terms, she's not the only one, of using terms that have been elaborated elsewhere to apply it. It looks like normal for us, but you know, it's not. Okay, so in order to situate my research, then I asked myself, how do I consistently implement a decolonial approach to research? How do I question the centrality of the European hegemonic episteme by addressing the challenge of thinking from the point of view of other subjects, other places, other worldviews, other languages? And these dimensions have, of course, to do with my positionality and my situatedness as a feminist in the first place. I am a European researcher. I chose to do a PhD in a Southern European university. For me, it's important, this Southern. I am a scholar of Arabic and Islamic studies, so I chose already to look at other places a long time ago. And I was still young when in 1995 I witnessed the gender equality agenda and the environment agenda at World Women Conference in Beijing being, you know, included in the developmentalist agenda, and then in the neoliberal feminism, and then in the national and international democracies, right? So I cannot avoid but rethink this concept. I was wearing the scarf there because it was very hot. Yeah, so I wanted to mention this. So in terms, you know, the critical positioning of the research is key. So how do I do this? It's a positioning that, according to many, like Rachele Borghi, who recently in 2020 wrote on the coloniality and privilege, it's a positioning open to co-participation of different forms of agency, and is related to the retrieval of other documentary sources, so queer media archives. So I'm looking not only at scrutinizing how power is wielded, but also how it can be resisted within the research context. And one of the strengths of the feminist critical theory is this ability to make us questioning and renewing. So to exercise the critical reflexivity And according to Britta Wigginton and Michel Lafrance, critical reflexivity is powerful for examining researchers' epistemological assumptions, their situatedness with respect to their research, and is crucial in addressing power dynamics in research. Addressing power dynamics, research cannot occur in a vacuum, right? I am a person. So I bring my story, I bring my identity, I bring my experience, I bring my worldview. I'm not neutral. I cannot, look at the subjects as if they were on a stage, and if I was looking at the theatrical, but not even in that case I am neutral, right? So recently, for example, I've been researching in south of Morocco in very remote villages. And these are villages that were very hit by the earthquake back in September 2023. So sharing with them my experience of the earthquake in Italy in 1981 when I was a kid was actually a powerful tool to enter, to create this space of co-creation, because we were putting our feelings there. So I think that this for me was important because it changed, it established a rapport. It started to establish a rapport. So recognizing that we are not passive can be the first step towards decolonizing research. Also, I was talking about privilege before. I've witnessed also, and perhaps I did myself, confessions of privilege. Yeah, like admitting that we are privileged. Of course we are, as compared to the situations we study, especially in sociology, because we study these difficult conditions and stuff. But these confessions can also be loopholes at some point that absolve the researcher from a duty to continuously search to support resistance. Our resistance and the resistance of people we are studying. So reframing our positionality, as many started to highlight, from discovering the community knowledge to learning. So once we are learners, the situation changes. And this is of course difficult. So it's difficult, and that's why I referred to the imbricated perspective as a critique of the coloniality of knowledge. According to some, the use of, and I quote, like Helen Martin and Patricia Roux, the use of imbricated approaches enables feminist struggles, which are themselves marked by power relations, to be constituted as an object of thought. So there are many feminists, decolonial feminists, that have theorized on the necessary feminist reflectivity. And this also means that we should do this essential step in thinking about what is oppression and the oppression of women, and seeing these different forms of oppressions that of course we can see, but we should listen from them, we should learn from them. What is oppression for me cannot be oppression for her, and vice versa. Since I'm saying rhetoric things, I'm talking obvious things, but I thought that when you are really there, overcoming your prejudices, your cultural biases, it's not that simple. Yeah, in order to produce and disseminate scientific knowledge, starting from this critical perspective, we need to break the system. So, first of all, I see the researcher needs to do and work on herself, which I'm not sure that the academia sometimes give to us this possibility, because it's kind of, yeah, really, it's on the edge of psychological, yeah, work on ourselves. So this is the most empiric part of my research that I'm bringing to you here, that it's very, very initial. So the attention to language and to the discourse through the research process implies questioning the language we use. In my case, I also use difficult languages like Arabic, dialects so linguistic variants of Arabic, and in some cases Berber vehiculated by French, and not only Berber, because then Berber is a French, Amazigh and Tamazigh, that are, you know, different variants of Berber. So how do we use the terms, first of all? And how do the terms we use prefigure the stories that people tell or do not tell us? Are the terms we use heavy and embedded in the dominant discourse, or are they more ambiguous and open? Do our questions allow for complexity and contradictions, or they require certain socially accepted responses? So one of this is empowerment, and we need to understand what is empowerment for these people. So for the term, for many feminists, has been taken hostage by development agencies, either on the multilateral, bilateral, or private level, and has been stripped of its original notion of power. And also I argue that in transnational gender governance discourses, the term came to assimilate power with individual and economic power in the first place, that has been depoliticized and has depoliticized the collective power discourse. So has been employed also by national governments to legitimize top-down policies and programs. So I worked with women, on this exercise of reframing this concept, starting from the Arabic term tamkin. Now, tamkin, the root of the term tamkin refers to being, rooted in a place. Makan is the place, and makana, it means, to exercise power from the place. So to me, and according to the discussions I also had with women, can refer to, can reflect agency from somebody's situatedness. So what comes out from the analysis, and we are still working on this, so this is really, really very initial, is this multiverse of meanings, where the collective is clear, because they talk about solidarity, sharing, somebody, then we put that together, but somebody talked about being together, friendship, but also they talk about no work, relaxation, okay, be nauseous, don't do anything. So I think this was, on an individual still aspect, but contrary to what empowerment actually is meaning nowadays with all this work on empowerment going on that ends up in women working 20 hours a day, because they don't get liberated, also because of cultural stance. I mean, it's not that easy, it's not through a project, it's not through 3 projects, the effort must be much more wider and holistic, if you want. Yeah, I run fast, so this is my last. Should be okay. So I wanted to end this presentation with a literal note, because yes, although I always feel ignorant in literature, as I said these days, but literature guides us in radicality and resistance. And so this quote is from Giulietta Singh in Dubrovnik from 2021. And it's a book I loved. She talks with, she writes a very moving letter to her 6-year-old daughter about race, climate change, and inheritance. And at school, the daughter is learning about history, society, and culture, but at home, she must learn to challenge and interrogate these stories. And then Singh and her daughter discuss subjects interconnected, I mean, race, legacies of colonialism, how to make a free family, mass consumption, climate catastrophes. So their conversation in this very, survival aspects, which I love. So we can read it together if you want. She says, you will need to read beyond the official archives with a keen understanding that resistance, collective actions, and stories of survival against all odds have been discarded by the grand narratives of history. You will need to cull carefully from the intimate and political pasts that have shaped your life, and you will need to draw respectfully from other histories of subjugations that are not yours, but have had no less a hand in shaping you. You will need to discover and learn from these fragments, from ancient stories and lost practices, from the hints and traces of lives lived otherwise, from forms of resistance already underway that are not yet perceptible to you.